Thank you. You may be seated.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, community stakeholders, students and family members. Welcome to this inaugural lecture of Professor Fanta. An inaugural lecture in a university is a very special occasion. So I wanted to take a moment just to give you a sense of why do we do this, right? It's the marking of a passage or rite of passage of every academic staff member that reaches the rank of professor. Now, this is not necessarily a simple journey in people's lives, partly because you get there through your scholarship, which means through your research activity. If you want to publish research in a university context, you have to submit that research to journals where at least 3 members of your peers will critique that work. That gives them the opportunity to basically look for holes in your argument, inconsistencies in the way in which you may have collected your data or interpreted that data. And so it's a very rigorous process and sometimes a soul-destroying process if your articles get rejected too frequently. So we have to tell our students, just remember that rejection is the norm. And your first rejection is actually the one that you have to take on the chin and learn from, because even when you become a full professor, your articles will still be rejected, right? And then you'll have to learn from all of your years of experience about how to deal with that and how to take the constructive components of that criticism, improve your work diligently, thoughtfully, without any animosity visible to your referees, and then hopefully get the article resubmitted and published. So by the time someone reaches a professor, not only has this happened to them plenty of times in their lives, it's a very humbling profession, but in addition to that, they've often counseled students, many generations of students, to go through the same process, become more rigorous scholars, and as a consequence, advance their disciplines. Now, I see lots of kids in the front. So one thing to know is that the more you study, the more advanced your degrees are, the less and less you study about. So a professor is a specialized individual within their field. And as a consequence, they become an intellectual leader in that field. And the move to professor is an acknowledgement of their leadership intellectually in that field as well. So today we honor that tradition, as universities have done for hundreds of years before, and we honor it in this context for Professor Ashenafi Fanta, who I'm very, very privileged to be able to give this welcome and introductory remark for. Prof. Fanta has had a very distinguished career, and he has chosen to focus on the field of development finance. I'd like to contextualize that field first so we all know exactly what his contribution has made before I get to his biography. So development finance occupies a fairly central position in the global and African development goals, as it seeks to mobilize financial resources to foster inclusive, sustainable, and equitable economic growth. The discipline addresses complex challenges, and these might be related to financial systems, to capital allocation, to institutional capacity, particularly in emerging and developing economies. The constraints in these economies is not just that you don't have lots of money circulating in the same way that you might in a wealthier country, but your institutions that intermediate between the supply and demand of that money might also be underdeveloped. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there are not opportunities to leverage different resources in different ways. And Africa has been one of the world leaders in certain forms of development finance. In Kenya, we had the development of mobile money through M-Pesa, for example. Very, very innovative product, immediately allowed for transactions to take place at a much higher frequency, between people who are buying and selling goods and services. So in our context, development finance is also the discipline that gives us a lot of insight into very innovative entrepreneurship. It can also give us insights into how to ensure that small and medium enterprises get access to finance. Now, Professor Fanta's contribution in this particular field, where he leads teaching and also a bunch of impactful research initiatives, is noteworthy. Firstly, he holds a doctoral degree in corporate finance from Johannes Kepler's University in Austria, complemented by a master's and bachelor's degrees with distinction from Addis Ababa University. He's recognized as an NRF-rated researcher, which is a South African rating system, and that acknowledges his international contribution from a scholarly perspective as well as his local contribution. His career trajectory spans multiple countries and institutional contexts, beginning with extensive teaching and leadership roles in Ethiopia over more than a decade. He later transitioned into applied research and data analysis, working with the Finmark Trust before joining the Stellenbosch Business School in 2017, where he's progressed through the academic ranks to full professorship, while assuming major leadership and academic program leadership roles. His research is situated at the intersection of financial development, financial inclusion, SME finance, and infrastructure finance, all of which are central to Africa's development trajectory. Professor Fanta has also demonstrated outstanding commitment to academic mentorship, having supervised more than 80 master's research projects to completion. He's also successfully supervised numerous doctoral candidates, contributing to the development of future scholars in the field of development finance. His academic leadership, therefore, extends to also examining doctoral dissertations from many universities across the continent and across the globe. He's also had a very powerful impact in the policy and consulting spaces, working for development banks, including the World Bank and the Development Bank of Southern Africa. He's contributed to major infrastructure financing projects and also been involved with renewable finance. So a lot of his academic work, which is often theoretical, has had real-world application in our country context. And that really is something that Stellenbosch University prizes. We prize it because it means that academic research doesn't just stay in the university, but in fact moves into our country context to have a social impact. So social impact is one of the key pillars by which Stellenbosch University likes to prioritize its contribution to the world. And Prof. Nico Koopman there, he holds that portfolio along with a couple of others and gives us very clear guidance about how we can take our research and actually leverage it to make a difference in the lives of our countries where many of our SMEs face very difficult challenges. In closing, I would like to conclude by saying that this inaugural lecture represents both a celebration of scholarly achievement and an invitation to engage with ideas that shape Africa's development future. Professor Fanta's work exemplifies the integration of rigorous scholarship, policy relevance, and meaningful societal impact. It is therefore with great pleasure and respect that I invite Professor Fanta to deliver his inaugural lecture.
Thank you, Professor Daniels, for the kind introduction. Prof. Nico Koopman, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Social Impact Transformation and Personnel. Professor Riza Daniels, Dean of the Faculty of Economics and Management Sciences. Professor Dieter von Wintel, Vice Dean Research. Professor Ada Jensen, Vice Dean Teaching and Learning. Professor Chris van der Hoven, our Senior Director. Colleagues, family, friends here and online, I feel deeply honored and privileged to share my academic journey with you today. First of all, I wish to praise God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, using the words of the prophet Daniel. Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells in him. I thank him, for he has been my source of strength and comfort. His light has guided my paths, strengthened me in moments of difficulty, and reminded me that all knowledge and success comes from him. To him be all glory, honor, and praise forever. I also want to express my gratitude to my parents, who gave me the precious opportunity to pursue a university education. Though their income was modest, they made great sacrifices to support me, placing my future above their own needs. Their generosity amid scarcity, their encouragement in difficult times, and their unwavering belief in me have been a source of strength throughout my academic journey. I recognize that this achievement is also the fruit of their love, their sacrifices, patience, and faith. They gave what they had and offered more than they could easily afford, so that I could have a chance to learn, grow, and reach this milestone. For their selfless support and enduring love, I remain deeply thankful. My wife, the love of my life, Sigeridatas found Wondam, deserves a very special recognition. She has carried a heavy responsibility with grace, patience, and strength, especially in raising our beloved children who are sitting in front of us here, during many times when I have not always been available. Her love and support have been one of the greatest foundations of my journey. She has stood beside me through demanding seasons, offering encouragement, understanding, and sacrifice. In many ways, she chose to put her own ambition and career aside so that I could build mine. And that is a gift I can never take for granted. This achievement is therefore also hers. It reflects her sacrifices, her faithfulness, and her unrelenting commitment to our family. For her love, patience, and selflessness, I am deeply grateful. I also wish to thank and appreciate the support I have received from my colleagues here at the business school. Their encouragement and collaboration has greatly enriched my journey. Through their advice, friendship, and professional support, they have contributed in several ways to my growth and success. I am equally grateful to my students, whose curiosity and enthusiasm has continually inspired me. Their engagement has reminded me of the purpose and value of my work, and they have been an important source of motivation along the way. I also appreciate Stellenbosch University's management for providing a truly fertile ground for growth, an environment where ideas are nurtured, excellence is encouraged, and people are supported to develop personally, professionally, and intellectually. I also appreciate the support I have received from the non-academic staff at the Stellenbosch Business School for various reasons. Let me say a few things about my research career. I love research because it allows us to generate new insights and contribute meaningfully to addressing important societal challenges. And my passion for research has been so deep that I have been even applied it in my personal life. You may wonder how. Be patient. When I was a master's student at Addis Ababa University working on my research project, I met the woman who would later become my wife. As we became more acquainted, I developed the desire to propose to her, but I must admit that I did not have the courage to do so directly. Instead, I decided to approach the matter in a way that felt familiar and a bit safe. I administered the questionnaire. Thankfully, she responded to all my questions affirmatively. And encouraged by these promising preliminary findings, I proceeded to the next phase of the study, which was a deeper interview. And this allowed me to gather more meaningful information from one and only respondent. And I also employed observation as another research technique, especially as I took time to acquaint myself with her family and understand the wider context surrounding this very important life decision. And in the end, the findings were conclusive, the evidence was very strong, and the outcome was life-changing. I made my daughter laugh. And about this lecture, this is the first time in my academic life that I have had the requirement to present a lecture to such a diverse audience. You can imagine the pressure. In the same room, there are members of SU senior management team, colleagues, students, friends, family members, and some of the youngest members of the audience, including my 7-year-old daughter. That presented a very special challenge for me, and I had to think carefully about how to present my research journey in a way that a 7-year-old could understand, while still keeping the rest of the audience engaged. In academic life, we are often trained to speak a technical language, to use concepts, theories, models, and methods that are familiar to our discipline. But today, I had to ask myself a much harder question. How do I explain this journey simply, clearly, and meaningfully to everyone in this room? And this reminds me of Paul Krugman, the Nobel laureate in economics. Immediately after he was awarded the prize, journalists approached and they asked him to explain in a simple way the contribution he has made, which was the nuclear theory. And he responded, I did not win the Nobel Prize for the simplicity of my theory. It was only for the value of the contribution. And I can now appreciate that challenge even more. Sometimes the ideas we work are very complex, not because we want them to be difficult, but because the problems themselves are complex. So today I will try to strike a balance to speak simply enough for my daughter to follow, meaningful enough to my family and friends to appreciate, and serious enough for my colleagues and students to remain engaged. If I succeed, then perhaps that will be one of the most important achievements of this lecture. You may wonder why I wanted to spend my entire research life looking at the financial sector. It must have been my initial career as a banker that ignited in me the interest in researching the financial sector. Although I spent only a few months working as a banking clerk at one of the largest banks in Ethiopia, that brief experience left a lasting impression on me. The role gave me an important opportunity to observe key services banks provide and the role that the services play in society. I began to appreciate that banking is not merely about deposits, withdrawals, and transactions. It is about trust and the movement of resources that support individuals, businesses, and the wider economy. Even in that short period, I was able to see how essential financial institutions are to everyday life and national development. That early exposure helped shape my curiosity about the financial sector and later inspired me to examine it more deeply through research. My research on the financial sector examined issues at a macro, firm, and household levels. And at the macro level, I studied causal relationship between financial development and economic growth, both across countries and within specific African economies. And at a firm level, my work focused on the role of finance in small business performance. And a third strand of my research examines the welfare effects of financial access among individuals. And of all these three areas, my firm level research remains closest to my heart after witnessing the challenges a small business owner faced in accessing a bank loan. He owned a paper plate manufacturing workshop in Addis, using manually operated machines that he had invented himself. He produced the paper plates from scrap paper collected from large factories. His business employed about 20 workers, all women with no alternative source of livelihood. He wanted to expand his operation and needed a loan, but every bank he approached rejected his application because he lacked collateral. Yet the financial viability of his business was clear. At that time, he was the only supplier of paper plates to several pastry shops and hotels in the capital. When I first contacted him for an interview for my research project and explained the reason why I wanted to conduct an interview with him, he immediately asked me, do we have a bank in Ethiopia? And that was a big shock to me. I know banking was introduced first in the country in 1905 as a result of unrelenting effort by the then Emperor of Ethiopia, Menelik II, who wanted to receive assistance from Britain, France, and Germany, and eventually only Britain responded. And the banking sector has been developing quite robustly for many years. But his question reminded me that in the absence of sufficient support accorded to small businesses and entrepreneurs, existence of banks would become meaningless. So that is why I chose from among the three strands of research SME finance for the talk of this day. I just want to begin by highlighting the importance of entrepreneurship and running small businesses. These are entities that are built when someone wants to build their dreams, when they want to make societal impacts. But the financial sector makes it difficult for entrepreneurs to expand their operation and also reach out to wider society. I want to quote Bob Hope's very relevant quotation, which is, a bank is a place that will lend you money if you can't prove that you don't need it. And this reminds me exactly how that small business owner that I met in Addis many years ago responded to my call. So when businesses are in real need for financial support, the former financial institutions may not be able to respond to their needs due to several reasons, one of which that we call in finance is a lazy bank hypothesis. Banks are too lazy to work outside their comfort zone to the extent of designing new products and new services that can cater for the needs of small businesses and entrepreneurs. When I say small businesses or SMEs in general, these are just businesses that hire low skill and medium skill labor. By the way, this is one of the interesting pictures I managed to generate using Gemini, which correctly captures the kind of businesses I covered in my research activities. You see a furniture workshop. You see oil manufacturing workshop. which can operate using a few employees. You can also see a laser product manufacturer in Addis employing 25 workers, out of which 23 are females. So when we see the small and medium enterprises, they play a critical role in creating jobs. The jobs they create are accessible to low and medium-skilled labor, which Africa has in large quantity. But yeah, you may wonder why small and medium enterprises matter. They matter because they account for 98% of all firms in Africa. That is a huge number. One study in Nigeria that conducted to introduce private equity market in that country found out that in Nigeria there are about more than 40,000 micro and small businesses. You can imagine that large number of entities operating in so many different sectors of the economy provide a valuable contribution, both social and economic contribution to a country. And they provide 50% of employment. The employment contribution of SMEs in industrialized countries is even higher. It's usually 60 to 70%. But the contribution in Africa is low due to smaller sizes of SMEs, but they still provide valuable contribution to employment creation. And they also contribute roughly to 40% of GDP. So this illustrates that SMEs play a very important role in economy of a developing nation. But the problem we have is they experience a significant financial constraint at a global level. About 5.7 trillion USD dollar financing gap exists. And in Africa alone, the gap is 331 billion USD. And I borrowed this picture from IFC's research report, which shows that particularly low-income and low-middle-income countries, SMEs operating in low-income and low-middle-income countries exhibit acute constraint in funding. Funding constraint in terms of percentage of GDP is very low, and in terms of absolute amount of supply of credit, the availability of finance is very low. And when you look at the number of SMEs that reported financing constraint across regions, Africa has the largest financially constrained small and medium enterprises, as you can see from this figure. And what are the drivers of the financing gap? The drivers of financing gap, as reported by bankers in Africa, this is from a survey conducted by European Investment Bank back in 2020. The most difficult challenge for small and medium enterprises is presenting and producing collateral that banks want to use as a security for granting a loan. That is at the top. And the second one is information asymmetry related issue. Small and medium enterprises are opaque. There is some degree of opacity. They don't keep records. And even when they keep records, the financial statements produced by the small and medium enterprises may not be trustworthy due to them not having the financial statements being audited by independent or external auditors. So that is the other challenge. Managerial capacity is also cited as the other challenge. And bankers also view SMEs to exhibit a very high default rate, and lack of credit reference also contributes to a limited amount of funding flowing to the SME sector. But when you expand on high default as claimed by the bankers, the data gathered by African Development Bank and Afri-Exim Bank suggests otherwise. As you can see here, this is data from small and medium enterprises who applied for trade credit and whose application has been rejected. And also the default rate of these similar businesses. And as you can see, there is a completely opposite trend between the two. The default rate has been declining from 2014, but if you look at the rejection rate, it has been rising. And this suggests that banks misperceive small and medium enterprises risk. And consequently, if they run into any financial constraint, obviously the rejection is awarded to SME loan application. So there is already bias in the sector against the small and medium enterprises. In my talk, I want to emphasize on some of the attempts that have been made to close the financing gap for small and medium enterprises, highlighting a few of them. And then I will also highlight those that didn't work and eventually identify key questions that remain unresolved and that need to be addressed in the future. So the first one is digital finance has worked really well in terms of closing the funding gap, allowing SMEs to have faster access to funding at a reasonable cost. And there are several examples. Dean mentioned earlier about mobile money being introduced in in Kenya, and expanding to other parts of Africa. And mobile money is providing a lot of access to credit. In Kenya, you have what you call Mishwari, a product specifically designed to provide access to small and medium enterprises loans that they need to fund their operation. And it has proven very, very critical, very important in easing the financing gap. And the other very important intervention was introduction of movable assets registry system. One of the critical constraints of SME is lack of collateral that prevents them from accessing bank loans. And in several African countries, initiatives have been introduced to allow SMEs to use their movable assets as a collateral. One scholar, having noticed that SMEs were unable to use their movable assets, he termed the movable assets dead capital. They've got a potential capital that they can pledge as a collateral, but banks usually want to accept only property and land as a collateral. But a move towards having a movable asset registry system is very good and very effective in easing SME access to credit. And the other one is credit guarantee. Credit guarantees provide an ease to SME financial constraint, guarantee programs that are implemented by the central government, in some instances by non-profit organizations and various institutions, allow SMEs to access loans. Interventions have been found to be very effective in easing the financing. Didn't work. For instance, interest rate cap introduced in Kenya, rate cap to reduce the financing cost of small and medium enterprises. But the outcome was loans, and as a result of the cap, they couldn't charge beyond the maximum allowable amount, and consequently, they had to reject SME loans. And this led to decline in bank credit to small and medium enterprises, reduced the financial intermediation, and it's also encouraged predatory lending. So that is one. The second one is there had been in the literature potential use of relationship lending to ease the financing constraints of small and medium enterprises. Relationship lending is where a borrower builds a long-term relationship with a bank so that the bank is less likely to require a collateral. But in the African context, my own research suggests that relationships doesn't work. It doesn't work. You must always present a collateral. And as a result, relationship lending didn't work in the African context. Digital finance, while there are various positives and advantages of digital finance, there are also areas of concern in using digital finance. For instance, unregulated digital finance can lead to over-indebtedness, both at a firm level and at an individual level. So countries need to introduce proper regulatory structures to ensure that the lenders provide credit following the proper credit vetting procedures. And what that means is that digital finance still has the potential to provide a solution to SME financing challenges if it is properly regulated. And this leads to 3 questions that I will be embarking on until retirement to keep myself busy. With the advent of digital finance and several financing tools we have in the sector, the first question is what regulatory framework can support the growth of digital finance as a sustainable mechanism for addressing SME financing gaps? This is one very important question. As you know, the technology is changing from time to time. We have several innovative digital finance products and digital finance services, and without proper regulation in place, we may not be able to get the best out of them. And the second one is, how can the technological resources constraint that limit SME adoption of digital financial services be effectively addressed? This is also very important because currently one of the constraints in expanding digital finance in several developing countries in Africa is lack of access to the technology. Internet penetration is still very low, and as a result, there is a very high concentration of digital financial services across the continent. About 60 to 70% of digital finance products in Africa are in South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, and Egypt. The rest of Africa still has to catch up to be able to benefit from the available innovative financing mechanisms. And the third important question is, what strategies can be adopted to strengthen financial literacy amid rapid innovation in digital financial services? Technology is rapidly changing, and hence financial literacy programs required to be financial products and platforms available. So these are the three important questions that I'd like to embark on in my future research projects. That's all. Thank you.
Good evening, colleagues. Prof. Fanta, it was great listening to you. And you really promised outside you will be short, and you really kept the promise, even though I said, please, let it out, let it all out. But thank you. I acknowledge Dean Risa, Vice Deans Dieter and Ada, Director Chris, colleagues and students of the Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences, and specifically of the Stellenbosch Business School. I acknowledge colleagues of other faculties and of other universities here, and here may be also alumni, emeritus colleagues, societal partners of the university, and I acknowledge the presence of guests, and especially the friends and beautiful family of our colleague, his wife, and their beautiful children. All protocol observed. Colleague, I must also say you gave us a good lesson in how science can be used in dating, scientific dating. We have filed this as well for the next generations. They can get good tips, scientific dating. We must discuss that as we go forward as well. Colleague Ashenafi, my mandate is to present this certificate to you on behalf of the Senate of the University of Stellenbosch. Senate is the central academic body of the university. This certificate confirms that you are a full professor of Stellenbosch University. Full professor is the most senior academic position at the university. Can we applaud our Prof and students, our full profs are driven and guided by values like the 5 E-Care values of Stellenbosch University. We call it E-Care values. That's the acronym for excellence. We believe at the university that we should work for excellence, that we do the best in terms of our capabilities and capacities and talents. But we also believe in excellence through diversity. Diversity of opinions, diversity of backgrounds, diverse ethnic, gender, orientation, backgrounds. Excellence through diversity. And we also know that we want to strive to excellence not through performance anxiety, but through performance joy. And I think we could say that we say we are concerned about our country, South Africa, about the rest of the continent. We're concerned about the world. We care. We want to live with sympathy, feeling with each other, especially with the most marginalized, the excluded, the vulnerable ones. Empathy, meaning we want to stand in the shoes of those who struggle. And also interpathy, meaning we think and feel ourselves into the shoes of those from totally different backgrounds and worldviews and life orientations. accountability. We really want to give account of what we're doing. We want to be transparent. Where there's transparency, trust grows and societies flourish where there's trust. And tonight you gave really account of what you are doing. You reflected your compassion. Therefore, themes like this. But then the R in E carries respect. From the original Latin to say again, put on your spectacles, respect. Look again, think again, consider again. Make sure that we've looked at the details, whether it be in research and whether it be in practical interventions or simply in bilateral relations. Did I really attend sufficiently to you and listen to what you want to put on the table? Thinking strongly whether our actions advance dignity, respect, in personal, in public, in professional, even in planetary relationships. Respect as acknowledging dignity of all, in all walks of life, including plants and animals and nature. And then lastly, equity, from the Latin quietas, to say we want societies of equilibrium, where some don't have too much and others too little. As a university, we're committed to working towards a South Africa and Africa, a world where there's equilibrium, where all can enjoy a life of dignity, of healing of all wounds, of justice, and also of freedom and equality. This lecture of tonight reflects these values. The three sets of questions that you want to pursue tells us also that you would say there is Agenda 63 of the African Unity, which is the strategic plan for Africa, to say we want an Africa in the end where all people and nature flourish. In South Africa, we celebrate now 30 years this year of our Constitution and Bill of Rights. And there we also say the most foundational value for South Africa is dignity. And we know that democracy and constitutions and frameworks like Agenda 63 are under threat. Democracy under threat worldwide. And one major reason for that is that yes, we attend to political rights, the first generation political and civil rights, but we insufficiently attend to the fulfillment of socio-economic rights. And tonight's lecture helps us on this journey where we say we need, in order to build thriving democracies, we need to look at the socio-economic challenges into this scientific detail that you're looking into it. Colleague, we congratulate you, we honor you with your family, with your friends, with those who already have passed and who are in some way present tonight. We look forward to keep on journeying with you here at the SPS and at Stellenbosch University. I gladly hand this over to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, colleagues and friends, and also I'd like to acknowledge Ashenafi's got one brother in Louisiana and another brother based in Paris, who thinks will be paying attention to what's happening here. And a mum who's about 125 kilometers north of Addis, who is confident will not be paying attention to what's happening, but no doubt is with us in spirit and mind. It's genuinely a joy for me to offer this vote of thanks, following what we just heard. Insightful, thought-provoking, highly relevant to where we are in the world at the moment. So rethinking SME finance, what works, what doesn't work, and why it matters, I think has done exactly what the best scholarship should do. It challenges assumptions, sharpens our thinking, reminds us of the questions we ask about finance and that they are never merely technical, but also human, developmental, and consequential. SMEs are often described as the backbone of economies, the building blocks of the world of business, but of economies in general. And yet, as you so powerfully demonstrated, the financial systems that are meant to support them do not always function as intended. And I would say your work compels us to look beyond conventional models, to interrogate what truly works in practice, and to ask perhaps the most important question: for whom does it work? Very much pointed us to that. In doing so, you've not only contributed to academic discourse, but you've advanced the conversation that sits at the heart of economic inclusion, sustainability, and growth, particularly on the African continent. And this is scholarship with purpose and with impact. As the Senior Director of the school, I want to say how proud we are to count you amongst our colleagues. Your work strengthens not only your discipline, but the broader intellectual project of the business school and university. You employ the kind of engaged, rigorous, and socially responsive scholarship that we aspire to offer. So tonight is not only about individual excellence and recognizing individual excellence, it's also about knowing and acknowledging collective effort. Inaugural lectures of this caliber do not happen in isolation, and I think that this has been said, so I'm repeating what has been said already so eloquently, but I'm sure you won't mind. So first of all, my thanks to our faculty colleagues who continue to support, challenge, and collaborate in ways that enrich our academic environment. Your role in sustaining a vibrant intellectual community is invaluable. Thank you. To the Registrar's Responsibility Center and to the EMS faculty, thank you for your coordination, precision, and stewardship of these institutional processes. I think everyone will agree that the job that they do means that we continue to see these in a dignified and seamless way. So thank you for that. To our colleagues in advancement, stakeholder engagement, and the communication teams, I happened to be listening to the parliamentary committee's stuff on TV, on YouTube the other day, and Karen Bruce introduced herself, and I was chuckling as much as she was by the time we got to the end. I think Prof. Nico had the closest seat to her that must have seen. She said it was a mouthful. But your work in bringing this lecture to life, in connecting audiences, and in ensuring that its reach extends beyond this room is appreciated. You make it possible for scholarship to travel, to resonate, and to matter. Many thanks. To Professor Fanta's collaborators, students, mentors, friends, and of course family, whether you are here with us in person or joining online, thank you. Your support, encouragement, and partnership have played a vital role in shaping the scholar we celebrate today. To our guests joining us virtually, we are grateful for your presence across distance. And to those here in person, all of you, thank you for your time, your engagement, your commitment to being part of this important academic moment. Such a critical milestone. And then finally, to Professor Fanta, thank you. not only for tonight's lecture, but for the work you continue to do. Work that challenges, that informs, and that ultimately seeks to make systems more equitable and more effective. It's genuinely a great pleasure to work with you, Ashenafi. All right. That concludes my vote of thanks. I sincerely hope I haven't left anybody out that should have been mentioned. I wouldn't dream of trying to follow the protocols after Prof. Nico so eloquently put them together. I'm going to record what he says and play it back at everything I ever do. So, finally, the procession will leave the room between you and your refreshments. So we'd like to invite you all to join us outside for refreshments and music after the session. Please take the opportunity to stay and to connect and to continue your important conversations. Thank you once again. We wish you all a pleasant evening and a safe journey home. If you don't mind, if you would stand, and please remain standing while the session leaves the room.